Thomas Morton went to drought-stricken Texas, where climate change-doubting residents are actually praying for rain. This is his debrief.
The Bible was written 2,000 years ago-ish, so it does not address climate change specifically. The two strains of religious thought that kind of bump heads when it comes to climate change is one, as we mentioned in the piece, a lot of evangelicals, the reason they don't believe in climate change is because they believe that God is in charge of the planet and its weather, and so it's arrogant. It's blasphemy for us to suggest that human action has screwed up God's plan for that. At the same time, the Bible does promote an idea that man should be a steward over his world, and that's a word that Christians like to use instead of environmentalism, especially because environmentalism has that, real liberal hippie taint to it. So they talk about the stewardship movement, which is essentially the same as environmentalism, but uses Christian terminology and basically says, like, God gave you this planet, take care of this planet, and that's all the way back in Genesis. Well, I was raised Christian, so I understand what these people believe and, why they believe it, that it serves a role in their lives. At the same time, I was brought up Methodist, which is a very middle-of-the-road Christianity, so seeing people, like, rolling on the floor and even clapping in church is a little bit anathema to me. It's a fun show, and I do get swept up in clapping along and singing and stuff like you would at a concert, but it's not going to impact my views on a situation. Preachers like Reverend Fender are charismatic, and that's part of being a preacher. I don't think that necessarily gives them license to really talk about stuff they don't really know, and I think Fender's good, at least in the part that he seems at least inquisitive about climate and all that, even if he doesn't believe in it right now. At the same time, he's got a pulpit and a big congregation, and what he says goes for those people. That's, kind of the way church works. I certainly hope not. The water that gets used for fracking, it's heavily treated even before it goes into the wells. And when it comes out is a mix of very toxic chemicals and also just rock particles from where it's dislodged oil out of the sand. So putting that back into the water supply would be an absolute disaster for any community. There are some fracking companies who are trying to figure out ways to recycle the water, but so far all that's really amounted to is basically cleaning it up to the point that it can be disposed of without being completely toxic waste. It's nowhere near clean enough, using today's technology to be drinkable in any way. There may be more people these days with conservative beliefs who are kind of coming around on climate change, but you don't really see it in politicians. As Bob Inglis points out, it is still a heresy, basically, in the Republican Party to not just express a belief in man-made climate change, but even to be just lukewarm about your denial of it. I mean, that's the whole reason he's not in office right now. And it makes sense when you consider how much the oil and gas lobbies spend, most of which is specifically tailored to the Republican Party, to Republican legislators. They want a return on their investment, so the Republicans have to keep that as an orthodoxy. There's not much at this point Texas can do on their own. I mean, it's a global problem. It's been going on for almost 100 years. We're way past most scientists' estimates of kind of the worst case scenario for where we would be right now. What they should be doing, though, is at least working with the rest of the nation to try to curb emissions, try to curb oil use, that kind of thing, instead of kind of sticking their fingers in their ears, declaring that it's junk science, even though 95% of the scientific community agrees with it, is just holding up the debate and holding up any sort of action we could take as a nation or a species.